Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have one change to the agenda, and that is Manton Boulevard for discussion a little bit later, and
Davis Road.
And let's see, do we have, yes, we have the errors and omissions on the schedule. Is there anything else we need to add? Okay. So I'm going to ask that we approve the minutes from December 4th, which I have read, and I will make a motion to approve.
No second.
Any discussion? Okay. Minutes are approved. All right, and then next on the agenda, we have Sydney from Two Rivers to discuss the Municipal Technical Assistance Program. And my understanding was the program was developed to help small towns who don't have the capacity necessarily for grants or to know which grants that are out there that might benefit them. So Sydney, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So I guess I wanted to start this off by giving a little overview of the program. So it started in March of this year and it was expanded in October, which is how Plymouth got in during that expansion to include more towns. So it's a program funded by a budget adjustment, which is really a capacity program. It is helping towns be able to access grants that they otherwise wouldn't have had the ability to access by letting the RPC work with them free of charge to the town. So the program's entirely paid for. Our assistance is entirely paid for by the state, not at all by the town for eligible activities and projects. So briefly, the activities that can be done under MTAP, the Municipal Technical Assistance Program, are a needs assessment, so looking at what the town needs, opportunity assessment, looking at what funding sources might be out there for those needs, application for those funding sources, if there's a funding source and an eligible project, and then if funding is awarded, management of that funding and help managing that project to the best of the RPC's abilities and capacity. So those are the eligible activities. What are your needs? Finding funding, helping manage that funding if awarded. And then the eligible project categories are fairly broad, but generally they are water and sewer or water and wastewater, including septic and well, but there are kind of limited funding sources for those. But we can always look if there's a project in well or septic, housing, climate change, resilience and mitigation. And we are figuring out how that one meshes with things that are on our mind right now, such as disaster recovery. Kind of a timely meeting to hold it during this rainstorm, which is causing kind of maybe flashbacks to July a little bit for some of us. So we're figuring out how that meshes with disaster recovery. Obviously, we don't want to overlap with FEMA federal funding. And then business support and kind of broadly community recovery. This is meant more as economic recovery, which is kind of nebulous. Workforce development in that category as well. And then there's a catch-all other category, and projects that don't fit neatly in the other 4 categories would fall under this and require AOA, Agency of Administration, permission to pursue funding for those projects. So that's kind of my elevator pitch for the Municipal Technical Assistance Program. Initially, does anyone have any questions or confusions?
Could you tell us a little bit? I think you touched on needs assessment a little bit before. Is that still part of the program?
It is still part of the program. It is going to kind of depend on what the town wants as a needs assessment. So of a less formal review, seeing what the select board sees as needs in the town, and what input you get from people as you talk to business owners or whoever uses your community buildings, seeing what your needs are that way rather than doing something more formal and more involved. Just because it's kind of a heavy lift for a lot of our smaller towns, and it can be a heavy lift for us too with 18 towns now. But oh, sorry, go ahead. I see that you were talking.
I think we're heading in the same direction. I was just curious, like, where do we start with this? Where do we kick this off?
Yeah, so you and I have had a good conversation, like maybe a broad overview, just kind of to get a sense of where the select board's at and thinking about this. And that kind of included a smaller version of the needs assessment. So we identified some needs for the town. I guess I would like to get the select board in general's opinion on some of these needs. So I know that you've got a town-owned school building, which is generally in okay shape, but it's used for a lot of functions, and that's amazing. So I guess I'd like to hear more about that, if there are any specific needs that have been identified for there. You know, just kind of in general what the town's needs are, and then based on that, I can get a sense of your priorities. And then see if those mesh with the municipal technical assistance program, and if they do, then I'll start looking for grants.
Yeah. All right.
Lauren is the community center director and runs the daycare over there. And I was wondering, Lauren, do you want to add anything for Sydney?
Yeah. So we have a folder of letters of support we're submitting from business owners and townspeople who are on our wait list and who are current members of our schoolhouse childcare.
I'm just gonna mute Mitch. There we go.
We have quite a wait list, and our childcare needs in our town are only growing, and people are looking to make Plymouth more of their permanent residence. And if childcare is secure, that's something that makes them feel even more secure to move here permanently. What we'd like to do is take more of a capacity at the community center to become larger and serve the needs of the community more. So we are looking at grants, of course, but also the population that is looking to occupy the childcare would support our expansion that we want to do. So with the growth that we want to see, we want to continue to access grants that are available and learn how the state can support us.
What would the grants be used for, Lauren?
Our different ages that we're looking to serve, the materials I have right now would already immediately outfit a baby classroom that we want to start to expand. But what we've heard from the community is after school is something that is lacking. The Woodstock program is no longer offering an after school program. And we have parents in the Plymouth community who are struggling to have after-school care for their children. So that's something that in the future I'd love to also offer. Because right now we're focused on toddler, infant, and preschool, but we have Plymouth residents who don't have after-school options, and I'd love to fill that need.
So Cindy, is that something that would qualify for a potential grant?
Yeah, municipal buildings that are being used for things like daycares. And I know that there's a farmer's market and tag sale and just generally a lot of stuff in this building. So it's definitely something we can look for grants for.
Is there a cap on the funding amount for each project?
So it's not a funding program, it's an assistance program. So there's not a specific grant, or there's not a specific cap on the amount of funding I can provide or the RPC can provide a town. You know, there are some very large grant programs that might take $25,000 of RPC time to apply to that are for, you know, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, or it might be a $3,000, you know, grant program where it takes about 2 weeks of our time to apply to. So it's really just going to depend. They wanted this program to be flexible. So yeah, it's not necessarily a concern. It's not it's not competitive yet. As funding dwindles down, it will get more competitive. Once funding is kind of lower, once there's, you know, kind of a limit on what we can do, then it will be prioritized by the neediest towns, lowest capacity towns, as defined by the Vermont Communities Index.
Al, is there anything you want to add as emergency management director, looking at that building? Is there something that comes to mind, or even with this building?
Yeah, I have to give it some thought. I really haven't considered.
And what would you say the general condition of that building is, from your perspective, Rick? I mean, I know it's dated, it seems solid, but.
I think it's very solid.
Okay.
It's got good bones. And it's got a new roof, it's got a new paint job, it's got a new boiler. You know, it's got some good asset to it,
Okay.
for sure. Okay. So I'm not sure I heard the answer to your question. How do we get started?
So I think the needs assessment is something we need to figure out how to like get that rolling on our end. I mean, I think part of it is, I mean, we can ask folks in the community what they see as important or priorities, but I think a little bit of that sort of depends on what might be available, what should we be also thinking about. Right, it's a little bit more specifically, yeah?
Mm. Yeah.
The overarching idea of what is going to happen with the building.
I think we can talk about that. Yeah.
Right, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Before we can decide any of the
Yeah.
particulars, what shall become of it.
So
Would roads or bridges or utilities like that be covered from a possible grant?
There are grants out there that cover those things, but it's kind of a conversation right now whether MCAP can assist on those. We are working that out with the Agency of Administration, and once we have an answer, we'll get back to our towns on how much or what types of transportation projects can be covered. So something like sidewalks in a downtown or, village center that don't have sidewalks, that would be covered, but culverts or repaving is kind of a larger discussion we're having right now.
Okay.
So I guess if we get some idea, the next step for us then is to get some ideas together and send those to you.
Yeah, that's a great start for sure. We can have, if you guys want to get community input, I think that's a great idea. And we can be in touch, and, you can send me ideas as you have them, and I'll start looking and giving you an idea of what might be eligible and what might have actual feasible grants.
Thing that strikes you?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions that come up, or, we can get fairly creative with this. Some grant programs encourage it, so don't be afraid to send your more creative project ideas too.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
And only you probably know this, and I heard Cindy talking about like the amount of work, like can be 2 weeks to months depending on the project. Is there do they charge to do the grants and submit? Is there a fee, like an upfront fee that has to be paid? Or is this all, forgive me, I just don't know that, so.
No, this is funding from the state, is that correct, Sydney, to help
Okay.
us with grant administration?
Okay, so no charge
Yeah.
then, okay. I thought that, but I just, when you was talking about the amount of work and stuff, I'm like, oh, does that mean something else, so.
Well, the state pays them to do it, yeah.
Yeah, it was recognition that
Yeah.
State pays everybody.
small towns don't have
Write
the
a check.
capacity or people to do it necessarily, yeah.
Money just comes from somewhere.
All right. We appreciate it.
Of course. Look forward to being in touch.
All right, sounds good. Lauren, this brings us to you and discussion around the community center and what you might be thinking could be next.
Great, so have you all received letters of support from various, I have copies of them to leave with you, if you do not want to get them.
Did just get copies.
in digital form.
We got them tonight, yes.
So in the last
they're
6 or
done
7
tonight.
months,
They're in the
since
packet.
we've started our new chapter of staying open year round, we've had an overwhelming amount of support from the community who is so happy that we are doing what we're doing with offering childcare throughout the week, throughout the year for the first time. 9 years ago, I took the position of Terry as the community center director, and at that same time started the process of licensing one of the classrooms to be a licensed childcare. And starting from scratch, it's a big process. It took me a whole year to go from, the first step is getting the fire marshal in for occupancy granted. And at the beginning, the room was used for storage. So it took me a whole year to gather materials and get all of the licensing and insurance and financing behind me to create the childcare that has only grown through the years. And through the years of operating it, it's created an amazing community. And I've had Eugene at the schoolhouse through the years. I've had so many youngsters of our community come through the schoolhouse and feel like it's part of their own. I've had Hunter, her grandson, there for summers, and the feeling of community is one that kept me going in the summers where I would work most of the summer just to pay my insurance because I was teaching in Rochester for many of the years. And since having twins and my life just reflected this is the time to kind of do this full time. So in the spring, I stepped back from teaching in Rochester and I took on my first employee, and she is now our opener. So we operate 8 a.m. through 4 p.m., Monday through Thursday. Caitlin is there to welcome the kids in the morning. I come in the afternoon. We kind of tag team so we can offer a full day of childcare for our local families. And the wait list has only grown. And the feeling of being appreciated for what we're doing is awesome because we charge what we know families can afford, but also what the state reimburses for, because we accept families who are on subsidy. And that makes up about 3/4 of our families. Because the reality is most of our families are struggling to make ends meet. And so what we want to do is continue to serve the community with expanding into the activity room. What that means is it would shift what the building's focus is really from a full-time community center where I've never fully occupied the activity room because I've always respected that room needs to be set aside for the community members at a given moment for a meeting or a birthday party or emergency relocation. And 9 years ago, when I started my relationship with the community center, the rental agreement was 5% of my profit would be my rental amount. I would always say yes to the building needing to be used for emergency relocation and being happy for it to be shared, which I always am. What I'd like to continue is that the building can always, of course, be used for emergency relocation, but that activity room now be turned into another classroom, where through the years I've already had it licensed through the state and on my insurance because I hold the liability insurance. But what we're hearing from the community is there's such a need that we should turn it into another full-time classroom. And amazingly enough, there's a woman who is local and wants to be my baby teacher and is qualified enough that with my support, she can be in that classroom with another 4 children, which the ripple effects of that, although it sounds small, for those 4 families, is huge. Because what we're finding in this community is there is no infant and toddler childcare. It's hard to even get your child into preschool, and you have to make sure that you get on the wait list when they're a baby, really. And people can't move into this town unless they know that there's childcare. And people want to be here. It's a beautiful space. But if they can't have childcare, somebody's staying at home. And that doesn't mean that's the best option, but that's what the reality is. And so I think what you'll find in my collection of support letters is families who are expressing their need to want to be here more, but they can't commit to that unless they have childcare. Between Caitlin and I, we have had an amazing year so far. The families are thrilled, the children are growing. We'd like to do more of that, and I'd like to take on another person to make that activity room into a toddler baby classroom. I'm not going to progress forward with that, of course, without the blessing of the select board and the agreement of the Historical Society and the Emergency Department, because that is also a function of the building. And from the beginning, I've only been grateful to be able to do this childcare in this building, because it's a great building, and I love it dearly. And through the years, that's why I've advocated for the roof being replaced and a paint job and just being present in it. I think the building appreciates having activity, and it's a great building. I mean, the kids who bust through that door, it's their second home. They love it. And there have been a number of children who have grown through the years because they've been able to be there. So we just want to continue to grow that program, and I hope that I can make that activity room into another full-time classroom. So this is my proposal to do that, but with the discussion of what that will look like. And also if that means compensating more for rent, I'm happy to start the conversation, because we are grateful to be there. And I understand that also there's a monetary cost to being there and to upkeeping the building. And I'm also not new to applying for grants, so I would happily look for ways to supplement being there and to pay the bills of being there.
So, couple questions. Sydney's still on, I see, and if there were grants, do you think there's a way that you could apply for those through the municipality? Because that's probably how they'd be eligible.
So
Okay.
when I helped with getting a new roof on the building,
Yep.
I secured a $6,000 grant, and there was matching funds from the town for that. But so I've been able to do that in the past, and even more so now with the severe need for childcare, and also the backing from the state. And you'll see the letter from Tisha, who not only is she our state rep, she knows exactly what's going on with the state and how they can support these childcares moving forward.
And then I'm also wondering, community events happen, there's a few that happen here, over
There
there?
are, so we have, the tag sale's a pretty big one,
Mhm.
and then the farmer's market the last few summers has been pretty consistent. But in looking at that, I'm also realizing these don't have to necessarily happen at the community center. We can be creative, and they can also come at a less cost for the town. For example, if the tag sale were to just happen on the lawn, and it's not me going out to put up the signs and open up the building for the bathrooms, et cetera, they can still happen, but without having a kickback. The tag sale as well does not have to happen inside the building necessarily, and it's been nice for the years it's happened, but we're starting to have more of a town presence, especially with Chloe's Market opening, and more of a vibrancy that I think can continue outside of the actual building of the community center. And if the community center were to turn more into childcare, it would support these young families that we want to be taxpayers, long-term residents, in such a greater capacity.
Yeah, better higher use of the building. Would any events have to, and a couple of things I'm thinking about, I remember when we talked before, I mean, you end up having to clean the building after events, and like if the Historical Society has an event, that kind of gets thrown to you.
So there, a number of years back, my list of duties just got a little bit longer, where we don't have anybody going over to the building to clean on an official basis. So I'm not gonna leave something untidy, and I take the trash home to my own dumpster, I vacuum the rugs, I mop the floors. These are things that I'm just going to take care of, and it comes back to the town as under my community center director duties. But if it were to shift more into just the childcare, those are not duties that I would be charging for. I'm very happy to continue to post for the Plymouth Press. I'm efficient with that, and I like to engage with the town with that and support the town for that. But my duties for the community center director would become less, I feel like, if I were to shift into a second classroom for the childcare. And also, now with this building being renovated and the space being more accessible, I think events can be held here in a greater capacity if there needs to be a historical society talk or meeting, etc.
Al, you're here from emergency management. Does that, if the building is used to a greater degree over there, does that create any challenges for you if you have to open that as a shelter?
Well, it certainly sounds like it would potentially be a challenge. I mean, it depends how much material, desk, furniture put in the rooms. I
Okay.
mean, with the current daycare room, we've lost, let's say, 50% of that space, even if we push everything aside. It would hinder the use of the shelter. I'm not saying
Yeah.
impossible, but it's, we need to wait it.
Kind of figure it out, okay. And then what about the Historical Society still occupies that building? That question has come up, whether that is the best space for them. We don't think we have the answer to that yet, but.
Angela and I had started talking, you
Yeah.
talked to the guy the other day up at Coolidge about potentially moving it out of there. See if they'd be interested in hosting it.
They're gonna come, I got an email this afternoon, 18th, January 18th, to look at 11 a.m.
They wanted
It's
to
there.
get an idea what kind of materials are in there and yeah, you know.
And have you contacted the Historical Society with? Okay,
I'm gonna let
Okay.
let you know.
okay,
So
Okay.
I talked with Barb and Joy personally, Barb more so, just to let them know that we have such a wait list at the schoolhouse, and I'm hoping to expand to meet more of the needs of the community. And what Barb relayed to me is they have a lot of materials, more so than when they were in the annex building. And they felt like they were pushed a bit from the annex building into the community center building. And that the annex building is a bit musty and not the best fit for them. I did let them know that we had such a wait list, that this is something that, you know, we're gonna pursue as far as wanting to expand. But another thing that I learned is 20 to 30 years ago, the Historical Society was up at the Coolidge site. And my mom remembers when
okay.
she was teaching at the Plymouth School, that's where it was. So I don't know why that changed, but it's not a new thing for them to
Okay.
be up there. And I think that they would probably have a lot more visitors if they were up the Coolidge site. But I also know that the response that I've had from my schoolhouse families, if there was a change, we would have a crew of dads who would be happy to help with the moving process. It's not something that we would be asking the ladies to do themselves or to break a sweat. They could direct more of where the boxes are going, because I don't want to push anybody out. I don't want to make anybody feel
Yeah.
bad. And I've only appreciated the relationship I had with the Historical Society in that building thus far.
I would say that I've been sort of mulling over what we do with the annex building. It's empty now that it was used for its temporary purposes of hosting the town offices while the renovations were happening, but we have a building over there that's heated. So that's something to maybe think about.
Should we talk about the wider discussion we've been having too?
Yeah.
We'll say, I'll start up, and I'll speak for the board probably, in thanking you for what you've done over the years. You had my kid there, you had a great time there. You know, the issue of childcare in the state of Vermont especially is a pressing issue. It's definitely needed, you know, it's more than needed. I think the discussion that we've had amongst ourselves is about, not about the particularities of daycare, but about the particularities of that building and its history, where it came from, where it is now, and what the town should, quite frankly, do with it. Not that that's not a great idea, because I think it is a great idea, but and being a elected official, my responsibility is to all the people of the town, not just, I'm a father, but, people with kids. And if you rewind the tape, that school was closed by a vote of mostly people that didn't have kids. So, one large part of me thinks that this issue should be put to the town, and that the townspeople of Plymouth should decide what happens to that building. And in full transparency, all the costs should be listed, and the direction that you want to take, the presentation you just provided here, you present that to the townspeople, and the townspeople would have to decide if that's the direction they wanted to take the building in. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, when they see the cost and the dollars, and when they see the sticker shock from their upcoming reassessment and taxes, they're going to flip out. And their instinct will be that we should close the building, we should sell it, which we have the option of doing. The building is inherited, we don't use it as a school. I'm saying we, the town. So it's another associated cost of many. We're $800,000 in debt now to fix this thing. So A part of me says, okay, if we can jettison that thing, fine, get rid of it. Sell it, rent it out. We can rent it out. I know right now of somebody that wants to manufacture, edible marijuana that's looking for a place in this area. They pay big money to go in there. I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying, anything could be on the table. So the big issue that I think we've had is how can we facilitate your daycare program, and how can the town of Plymouth get behind it, and also appease all the people that are gonna be shooting arrows at you. And I think who a lot of them might be, that are not gonna wanna do that if they knew the whole story. And I think that I would like to tell the whole story. I don't think I could sit here and approve that without letting it be a public thing. And that the people should decide what we do with the building. The people should decide if it's so I think Plymouth should get behind it. Tessa's letter here, she's kind of insinuating, but that's not the case, because it's your license, correct? It's your daycare program. It's not Plymouth's, and Plymouth is not currently supporting the daycare program. If we're gonna use our schoolhouse to house it, I think that Plymouth should, but we can't the way it is now. And I think we've had this discussion about a lease. I think, we would have to have a real lease, between you and the town if it's just gonna be your program. In terms of the lease you have now, which was a different board 9 years ago, So there's a lot of kind of loose ends. It's not impossible, but as I see it, the town would have to be behind it. And the town would have to be willing to pay for it. And then the select board could approve it. The alternative is, we can vote on it right now and say it's gonna happen, and that's that, but that's how I see it. And again, not to say that it's not the best idea, because it probably is. That's probably the best use of what we can do with it. I don't potentially think that continuing the events as they're going on is a great use of the building for however many people show up. I don't know. And then the shelter thing, sure, it's a shelter, but again, I'd rather be having kids in there having, that's a lively building. It could sit there empty for her, is there anybody there tonight? No, nobody's sheltering. So whatever, yes, we need it, fine, but it should be something that, it was a school, there should be kids in it. But how do we get the kids in it? How do we do it in such a way that half the town's not gonna come out and, what the hell, what the hell, town meeting, what the hell, I ain't paying them. They'll all be, so rather than go down that road, we need to kind of construct it in a way that we don't have to do that, the town of Plymouth gets behind it.
I think a vote would be great, because then it would put it to rest in a sense of where the support is and what the town's people would like.
There's a lot, the letters, you gotta, like any other cause, get the people in here at a meeting, pack the meeting, get them voting on it, and outvote the, people crying because their taxes are going out,
I think when we illustrate the costs, right, we'll just be real transparent about it, what it takes to heat the building, put electricity and internet, and some of these costs we're gonna carry just the same for an emergency shelter. I think that's a pretty reasonable ask for most folks.
I think so too.
Yeah.
How could
It's a
it?
multi-function,
Yeah.
so regardless. And before the childcare was there, it was only housing the community, the historical society.
Yeah.
So when I first went into the building, 2 of the rooms were totally unoccupied,
Okay.
not doing anything. So through the years, it's become only more used and more utilized, with more grant money funding into it.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to move the historic, to give you more room to move that out of there. It makes more sense that it's at Coolidge anyway, and more people would see it and do it and go, whatever they're gonna go see it there.
In the right way. So, nobody wants to feel pushed or shoved, but supporting the community members. And what we're hearing from families is they need help watching these kids. And most families need both parents working. That's the reality of making ends meet. And a lot of our families are still on subsidy. So these are not families who are making a bunch, and I'm not paying my employee a bunch. We're working really hard for $20 an hour. And she's great, but we're both licensed educators that we left professional teaching jobs because we have kids of our own to do this in this capacity, because we want to be the ones giving our children this education.
So you're contributing in your own way to the
Yes.
daycare as well?
Yeah. We
Get it.
couldn't make twice as much if we were back in the
Lauren, are you nonprofit?
No, so when I opened up the business, I was just learning about businesses, and in my mind I was like, I want to make a profit. So I opened up as a sole proprietorship, for-profit. Now I've learned that kind of cuts me out of some of the grants. Not all of them, but to open up as a nonprofit, I would have to shut down the schoolhouse and then reopen as a different entity. So I'm a for-profit, but that doesn't mean that I am cut out of all of the grants.
How long would you have to shut down for?
I don't know, but it would be a whole new licensing process and.
Really?
Yeah, and especially the big piece is getting new insurance. And so when I got my insurance, because I hold my own liability insurance for the program, and when I got insurance, we just put new wood chips down on the playground, and there was this whole, like, they come out and they look at everything. And so, and my insurance has only gone up every year. It started at $700 a year, now it's like $1,300 a year, and it only goes up. And the more employees I add, everything only goes up. So I try to just stay steady and understand every dollar that I incur as a business owner.
I'm glad that you're considering expanding and you're giving it a lot of thought and planning. But one of the things, Lauren, that brought this whole issue to our attention 2 months ago or whenever it was this itemized bill for expenses as a director. And that was something that surprised all of us in a sense. And we're trying to figure out how to get our arms wrapped around that and minimize those expenses.
Sure.
And
So I think probably what you were seeing is a bill from what incurred during the tag set time. And that event takes a lot of hours. And actually Terry is here and Terry can talk to the fact that the month before and the time immediately during the tag sale and afterwards takes a lot of hours. And it's not something I'm doing as a volunteer, and it's something that the community has expressed wanting, and it takes a lot of time to organize.
one of the discussions we talked about around was seeing if some of those duties can be administered through our clerk, through Angela.
Sure.
Or volunteers.
Well, and that's, one of those, if the childcare were to expand to the other room, I would just be stepping back from those type of duties. I don't really have an interest then in running a tag sale that takes 60 hours from the month before to put on. Also, if that room's gonna be set up as a childcare classroom, that takes away that space that would be transformed into this tag sale, that it's a lot of work to put on a tag sale for a dozen people. To have 200 people in this room, and so that bill would effectively go away. And
Yeah, I mean, it's a large part of that discussion was what Rick's saying, and it's not there, this is, and you can correct us if we're wrong, I spoke to Terry about it, but it's not you, you're not a town employee. This was a kind of informal position that was established by, previous board, that, Terry had, you were the first, and you inherited from Terry, but it's never been formalized in such a way whereby, I'm not speaking for the two of you, but I don't think all three of us, none of us felt comfortable with that not being a formalized town position and the amount of money that we were spending on it. So I think that, it's another thing that the town would have to decide, do we want to have a community center? And do we want to pay somebody to run it? My personal view is, given the amount of people that attend those events, I don't think it's worth the money that we pay. No offense to have them, it just doesn't pan out. There's like hundreds of people, and we were making money on food or whatever, but it doesn't, the few people that do show up, fine, they enjoy it, but is that, if you compare it to what you want to do, it's like, it's apples and oranges. We shouldn't have a tag sale, it should be a daycare or something,
Yeah.
so that's
Well,
where.
through the years, I think it can change to reflect what the town needs.
Yeah, I've been thinking a little bit since our conversation in the back of my mind, trying to drag some things out of my dusty memory. Just a couple things. One, there used to be a line budget for that position. Does that still exist? Is that still there, or is
I
that?
don't believe that's in the budget, and there's no reason it couldn't be.
Well, I'm just curious, because when Rick said you guys were surprised a little bit by the itemized thing, I was thinking to myself, but hang on.
It used to be 8,000 for my position, and then they dropped it to 6 and added on cleaning fees.
I see.
So cleaning
Okay.
duties, so my position became less compensated with more duties.
Okay, I got it, okay. So there has been some change over the years, and I would have anticipated that whatever expenses Lauren or anybody else had for the management and cleaning or whatever's being done would have come from that budget, but it kind of sounded to me like it was something extra budget the way you guys perceived it. Am I reading that correctly? Is that the way that?
Yeah, it's no longer, I don't think it's any longer a line item, we're just working on the budget.
Okay.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about too is like, what does it make to make this whole project doable for?
Yeah, so this is the other thing,
Right,
if I
that's
could,
how I
Jay,
think about
the
it.
other thing is, when we first set it up, it was an experiment. The idea was, the question on the table was, if the town bought the building from the school district, what in the heck were we gonna do with it? And there was some conversation around that, and then I just put forward a proposal for trying to find a range of uses for it that included some community activities, included seeing if there was any appetite for something as far-fetched as a small business, what do you call that, where you nurture. can't think of the right
Incubator?
word. Hmm?
Business incubator?
Incubator, yeah. That was a thought, would there be some interest in an incubator space? What could be done? And the idea was, a budget was put together to let me explore that and see what real interest there was in the community for a community space for recreation and so forth. Upshot of that, it seemed to me by the time, about 3 years later, about the time Lauren came in, as I reached a couple conclusions. One of them was that in the segment of the population that I had connection to, and also through several surveys that I ran, it seemed to me that people were interested in outdoor activities more than indoor activities, but they didn't really need to go to the community center, they could go to the lakes or the mountains or the ski slopes or the bike trails. So it was difficult to find that as a kind of a hub. And then the second thing that I thought was that, I was old enough that I wasn't connecting as well as someone younger could with the younger people who are just beginning to come back into town and start their families and that sort of thing. And that's why I talked to Lauren and then proposed to the then board that I should probably step back and someone younger should step forward, and I suggested Lauren for that position in that hope that she'd be able to connect with the younger families and find a use for the space for the next generation as I was aging out of that. So that's some of the history there. As I've watched it over the years, of course, the schoolhouse and the program that Lauren's been running has been the primary thing that space has been used for and known for. My own grandkids have spent some years there also. Until the pickleball court was put in, it didn't really seem to me that it ever gelled as some kind of place for people to go and do activities. And so part of me has wondered whether, as a community center, it really has a future. Does Plymouth really need a community center when people's idea of activities, doing things, whether they do it with their neighbor or by themselves or whatever, guests that come up, is going out to the ponds and the lakes and the hills? Maybe we just don't need that space. Lauren was able to find ways for young families to use it for birthday parties and gatherings, play dates with the kids, and that's great because of the playground that's there. And I think there are a couple anniversary events that have taken place over the years there. But for the most part, it has been empty apart from the school that Lauren's been running there. And I've just increasingly wondered whether trying to make a community center out of it and that whole piece of it isn't pushing against, trying to make something happen that doesn't really have a constituency in this community. So I kind of think that piece of it maybe needs to be put to bed. The emergency center shelter, I thought was really genius, that part of it. There's a part of me that wonders about this space as the emergency shelter, and then I wonder, well, if we did that, where would we hold those wonderful meetings we were having, town meetings, when we were shut off for that week or so? But maybe it all happens in the same space, or maybe there's some other way to think about this. But I do think having some provision for emergency shelter in extreme cases like Irene is still something that has to happen. And even if that meant that all of the stuff that was in one of those classrooms got moved to the other classroom, and that just became a storage room for that duration, something like that probably could be done. And the number of times it'll have to be done in the next 20 years is probably 2 or 3.
Well, that uses a little bit.
Yeah.
But in the end, I mean, this is amazing what's happening over there. I mean, I love seeing life at the old schoolhouse. I think it's good for local families that can go to work, and I hope we can find a way to support this, whatever it takes.
I'm sure just one clarification on the shelter. It's not that we would not use this room as a shelter. The problem is, if it's a flood event, we can't use this building. We have to go to higher ground. If it was an ice storm, be a non-issue, this space. So that's the only.
Higher ground than that building? Or
No,
that
higher
was
ground
higher?
than this.
Oh,
Because Irene, this is the water.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Fallout. It's a good fallout, the school. It's got a basement. The school don't have a basement, does it?
No.
Uh,
Wow, there's that. The furnace room.
The furnace room is a little lower.
It's not very big.
No.
I think, Lauren, you'd find there's a lot of community support for your program, and it certainly has terrific value for Plymouth. But we need to satisfy the element that looks at this as a business in dollars and cents. So maybe a way to keep this moving forward is if you were to come up with a proposal on what you think you can afford for rent. Let me ask you this, if the board gave you an okay to expand, how long would it take to get that up and running, the extra?
A few months, because I already have it licensed and insured,
Yeah,
and I have a woman who wants to work in it.
yeah, so within a month or so.
I'm
Okay.
always monitoring.
So the idea of a proposal with that in mind, I think would help move this forward.
Okay.
So you might want to think about that. You know what I mean?
Do you want printed off versions of the support letters, or do you have them?
We have
I know it's-
We have them. We got them tonight. Okay. Yeah, that was a good move. Good PR.
There's a lot of people who use the program and
Sure.
who are hoping to use the program too. And I think once you read through it, you can feel the meaning behind what they're trying to say. There's people sitting at home hoping that their children can go to childcare instead.
So how do we transfer some of these director duties, funnel them over to Angela?
So we're just shifting costs when we do that, right? I mean, that's why
Well, I
this is.
suppose.
So that's one way.
Well, as Terry just said, I mean, shouldn't we put that, if we're gonna put all this to the public, shouldn't we ask the public if they wanna maintain it? Does the public wanna still have a community center and have these tag sales and everything, or the public, or no?
So-
And if they did, and then we could
Okay,
transfer it to Angela.
we'll figure it out, I guess, yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Town meeting's what, we're 2 months essentially away
Yeah,
from
I
town
was gonna
meeting,
say,
so,
You
I mean,
can kind of explain what that.
if you can mobilize your constituency behind your, is that 2 months, is that enough for you to gel it, get it all, so there's full house and, and then, make it happen? Not the typical, the 50 people that show up or whoever, all the people, that want to see this happen, have them here and make it happen.
I think we're only gonna see positive things if we support the young families in town.
It's better than old people from New Jersey to cry about taxes. No offense to New Jersey, whoever's listening, whatever.
You need young people in the town for the next chapter.
Awesome, thanks for coming in. So, we have select board to review and sign the following. By the way, this is, we have spent $2 million on storm recovery from the July storms. That is eaten into the town's cash flow, no surprise. So we are taking on a line of credit up to $1.5 million to help pay bills. We spent cash from reserve accounts. I can let Elaine, if you want to chime in on any of that, but we've been spending town money from reserve funds and everything else to fund this while we're waiting for FEMA reimbursement. So this is our bridge loan to get us through to FEMA reimbursement, and right now we're this $1.5 million line of credit. We're hoping to borrow $500,000 to get us through. Have you read the documents prior to this? Okay, I'm gonna.
I didn't read them.
Yeah.
Before I step out to get back to the.
I don't think it matters.
The other day, one of our kiddos accidentally pulled the fire alarm at the schoolhouse. So the fire department had to respond- Yeah, I don't know if the fire department had to respond to shut it off.
Did you go over, Angela?
Did you? Yeah. So I since purchased a professional fire alarm cover, although it looks like it needs to be screwed into the wall, which I do not want to do because there might be wires and things. So I have that cover if somebody can assist.
I'll look at it tomorrow.
That would be great. So yeah, I'll probably.
Is that a UL approved and?
So I spent $80. It's the best one out there on the market. But
They'll be in on Wednesday. So go over with them.
I love. Okay.
What's the alternative to not signing it?
So I just
What's that?
wanted to-
What's
I
the
took that
alternative?
step So we don't have.
Bankruptcy?
Well, I guess there is no
To
alternative.
save money, we stop paying bills.
Oh, I mean, we'd have.
So does that mean I don't have to go over tomorrow?
No, Kevin's not.
Huh?
Will we levy taxes
They'll
on
be
it?
here Wednesday morning.
Okay, great.
And this is
So I'll
just
pass it off to
us,
professional people then.
Yeah,
basically borrow, short-term borrow.
This isn't different from the other one. Is this another one, a new one?
This is short-term borrowing, yeah.
In addition to that other one?
Yeah, because we spent $2 million to recover from the flood. Which
Is this
is,
through the same bank?
what other one? What
The
other
road
one?
one for July. Didn't we have to get a line of credit for that?
no, this is it.
Oh, this is it?
This is it,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, I've seen that. That's what we're signing now?
Yeah, this is the same one. That's what I was trying to figure out.
Borrow away. Borrow, it's only money.
It just took a while to get there.
Do you have to split? Do you want to go, can we put him in now? since
Josh is next.
The sheriff's not here?
Yep, Josh is next.
Do you want to go now, or you want to go later?
You want to sign it?
I'll help you lead into it, but I gotta sign this first.
And we also have to have Elaine and Angela come up and sign this as well.
Really?
Let's make a motion to approve.
Are we signing the same one?
Yeah, so we have to do this, so we'll have to redo it again. So I'm gonna make a motion to review and sign the following: the A, resolution, B, tax certificate, and C, the expense note.
Okay, this is the resolution that needs your signature.
Okay. And there should be a page in there
Yeah, it's a 3-page document.
for
4 pages.
Elaine and Angela,
That's a different, oh, yeah,
and I'll bring that.
oh, yeah.
So you're on the hook too, we all go down together. The ship sinks, they take us all.
All right.
I'm gonna bring this one, you signed that one, I'm gonna bring this one to Angela to sign.
Okay, how about this one? Who gets that?
Terry, you want to sign it too? Sure. Give her the official blessing from God.
Do a Quaker style, everybody signs.
Okay. And then this one is so that Angela and Elaine are the only two authorized to request funds.
I will sign this one, okay.
Let's see, print and title sign. Now, my pen doesn't seem to be working as quite as good, but.
I'll do it.
Okay, you have the
Does
pen,
it-
right? Thank you.
Yes. This is the completed file. Is that where that goes?
I'm gonna give this right to Elaine.
Okay, good. Good.
Elaine, you'll take this away with
I
you, correct?
will take it.
Take it to the
yes.
bank.
Well, I guess I'll ask you later, but.
Jay made a motion, or when he's going to second that.
Rick's gonna.
When he's gonna what?
He made a motion to, like,
Oh, I'll second it. Sure.
This is page 3 of the resolution.
Here's the resolution,
Okay.
I believe. Is that a signature page? Yep.
I need page 2.
Okay. And then,
Wait a minute, maybe it's here. I've got it. 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got it.
okay, this is the town current expense note for the line of credit. And you have to sign that
Keith,
one.
what's that in the upper right-hand corner for the big screen?
Good question. Patrick.
Yeah.
What is that?
You need your
On the
signature
top
one more
right.
time, okay?
What's that on the top right?
This is for the town of Plymouth tax certificate, current expense borrowing line of credit.
Yeah, what is it?
Okay. And,
Willow?
Oh, is it? Okay.
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 It's just a
Can't-
thumbnail.
I can't, I don't, doesn't. Ask Terry.
Gary, do you know what that is in the right-hand corner of that screen?
Tina?
No, above it.
It's
Willow.
It's Willow, but what is it?
It's her picture.
Her
of,
chair or something?
Yep, that's Willow.
Okay, those are-
okay.
those are yours.
2, and there's another document.
There's 2 documents there.
Doing some doodling.
Is that what it is?
Got it. Thank you, Jay. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Happy borrowing.
We don't want that again.
Okay, Keith,
You got them all?
we got them all.
All right.
Constable discussion. You gonna kick that off?
I'll lead it off. So we've kicked this ball around now for a good year. It's probably more than a year. Talking to one of our, I guess you're our first constable, correct? Josh Linton, he's here in the audience. So, Reader's Digest version, I don't, you guys can agree to disagree or not. I think that we've been in some form of agreement over the past year and a half that the town of Plymouth would be better served in certain capacities if our constable was empowered to enact police actions, if he was empowered to have a policing, official policing duties. And by the statutes of the state of Vermont, a constable, as empowered by the board, can have quite, in fact, an interesting array of powers at his disposal, almost, almost equivalent to a acting police officer, to certain capacities that he or she can act in. And that, stepping in that direction, I had a conversation with Josh today. We would like to propose, and he will, propose here in himself, but we would like to propose together a trial plan whereby, Josh, who's already certified, would take on approximately 12 hours per week over the weekend time shifts, when the sheriff currently is done at about 5 o'clock on a Friday. So at that point, Josh would take over. He'd work 3 shifts throughout the weekend of various times, 4-hour block. And that's the broad brushstrokes of it. We would require certain gear and communications capability, dispatch capability, all of which Josh has worked out to a certain degree. And I speak for myself here on the board. I would like to see this at least tried. We're going to propose like a 3 to 6 month trial period to see how it works out, how Josh fits into it. He's already doing this for the town of Woodstock. And, reassess and reevaluate and take it from there, perhaps expand it, perhaps step away from the sheriff's department. Does that kind of touch upon, sound like how we talked this afternoon?
Basically looking at some of the quick numbers that I was able to kind of draw up based off recent purchases of Woodstock for safety stuff. Body cam is probably the most expensive thing, it's about $2,000, give or take. That maybe shop market, you could probably get that cheaper. That was just the brand they went with when they was bought everyone. Radio, portable radio for communications, about $1,500, give or take, from Motorola. The dispatching fees, that's the part that we have to really kind of hit to figure out what Woodstock will charge us, because that's who Windsor County Sheriffs currently use for their communications from our town too, for their law enforcement they do in that town. And then we'd have to figure out how far we want the powers to go, because then that also comes into play, needing to use DUI, that type of thing for booking, if that was something that we decided to go that route. And then we'd have to make a deal with Woodstock or let them use their equipment for that stuff as well. You know, there's a lot to this, but it's all stuff that once we have an idea that this is what we want to do, then we can really kind of indulge into those numbers and take a deep dive. This is just kind of a quick, here's the idea, what's it gonna cost to get up and running, kind of idea. You know, that's not including a car, which currently I would use my personal car, we'd have to get a red light, a blue light permit from you guys to do that.
And you want like mileage reimbursement?
Yeah, we'd have to figure that, all those details out on how we want that to be done. And, you know, we'd have to figure out, what the uniform's gonna be, if we're gonna go uniforms. A body, bulletproof vest, body armor vest is about $2,000, give or take. Woodstock just paid $1,600 for theirs, but they bought 3. And they got a deal from, Paras up in Waterbury, but that's the state contract, so we might be at that state price too. Don't quote me on that. That's just kind of giving you guys some rough.
So what about the
numbers.
administrative components that I'm really kind of curious about, like, so when you, I don't know how all this works.
Yeah.
Like dispatch sounds like you've got an idea how that can work.
Yeah.
I mean, when we talked to the Vermont League a while back, they said you should probably have backup. How does that work?
So that would be another, so we have to make it a deal. Right now, we currently are still using the sheriffs. So right now, I think our backup would be the sheriff's department,
Okay.
based on what our current setup is. If we went to this and we were saying, okay, at some point we're done with the sheriff's department, then it would be a conversation with the SP. I mean, that or a neighboring town. I mean, there's a lot of neighboring towns that do those, I back you up, you back me up, and that's a cost efficient thing that tends to.
That's kind of tough if you're, I'm not looking to poke holes in this, but, I mean, so you're gonna have to rely on the sheriff's department, basically. You can't be back up to another town if you're only working 12 hours a week, kind of.
Right. Well, with this current setup, the
Yeah.
12-hour-a-week setup, yeah.
Okay.
Totally, you know, but I would say if we were to move it forward to a longer, you know, an actual, more of a department type of a scenario, then we would, you know, indulge in that conversation with Ludlow or, you know, Woodstock or Killington, because Killington also has their own, they have 2 officers, I believe, in Killington. So that, you know, you make one of those deals like, hey, our officer will back you up if your officer can back us up, type of thing. That's what a lot of towns do. I mean, Harvard does that for Woodstock, Woodstock does that for Harvard. In that scenario, but they're also both full-time departments. So,
And what about the administrative pieces of this? Like
so the administrative piece is gonna be, would be mostly tickets that get contested. That would be sent back to our town clerk, I would assume would be the one that took that on.
Okay.
Only thing that she would have to do would be, she'll let me know that, hey, that car ticket's contested at this time.
And payroll,
And
right, with payroll.
With the payroll.
Yep.
And then, I mean, we could, I'm assuming Woodstock would also make a deal with us based on the dispatching thing, that their admin that does just their police may be willing to, because I already have an establishment with them, may be able to work with us on if there's an arrest and that all this paperwork has to be sent in to the state's attorney. We might be able to have that tossed into whatever deal we were able to draw up that says, hey, if I get any cases here, that can she also send those cases to the state's attorney? Because we're gonna share a state's attorney, same district, same county, so.
So I'm hearing a one-time capital budget, right, of expenditures to get set up for this, and then I'm hearing ongoing expenses. Do you have any idea what like ongoing expenses are, Keith, for this? Like monthly
Outside of
expenses?
paying him?
Pay
Thank
him,
you.
increases insurance,
Gas.
mileage. Yep, and then this administrative component that somebody has to either take on the clerk or
Yeah, so.
There should be extra hours for Angela to process paperwork.
Yeah, the processing of the paperwork and your ongoing, because once you buy a body cam, it's good for 7, 10 years.
Now, are the constables operating out of Woodstock have that? They're wearing armor and have a body cam and everything?
So, yeah, I'm a cop in Woodstock, but yes, we have body cams. Then we also have vests, all the safety gear, everything that's required by state statute. The other thing, like the other ongoing cost would basically be, the insurance for covering me as the time to cover me as the officer for the town. Your duty belt, like that's one of those things you're gonna buy every once in a while. It's not gonna be hey, this is an every year cost. Your vest isn't gonna be an every year cost. I think those are good for 3 years before you ever send it up to have it just rechecked. It's not hey, it's bad, it's just, they send it out for a test.
Recertified.
Yeah, more or less. But yeah, so we basically be finding that dispatch/processing agreement. And, like I said, I just mentioned Woodstock, and that's where I got my numbers, like, a little bit of this rundown from, just based off what the sheriffs were doing, but we're gonna be a whole lot less, so that's why they, Chief Sergeant didn't want to give me a number, because it's gonna be less than the sheriffs, because they're doing all the whole county, and all the towns for the sheriff's department.
So we're
by little town.
Yeah, so this is for dispatch you're talking about?
Yeah, for dispatch.
So do you have any kind of idea what an annual budget for this would cost?
So like, I know dispatch, for example, for the sheriff's department, and I knew this is the whole county, not just the town of Plymouth, it's 40,000. But that's for the entire county to be dispatched, law enforcement by them. Ours is significantly less because we're one town, we're almost a pen drop of a version of that price because
Yeah, I'm just wondering,
whole lot less calls of service.
like the whole program, what do you think that costs us a year here?
I don't know, I wouldn't dare say, 'cause I don't know. I mean, that's something we could definitely, if we're gonna say, yes, we wanna move forward with this, then we can start trying to figure out those numbers. I'm assuming it's not something we're gonna vote on and say, yes, we're committed to it tonight. It's more so, are we gonna move this numbers forward and have something to present for town meeting, I would assume?
That's up to these guys, it's up to all three of us to decide how we want to play that, skin the cat.
Yeah.
Rewinding the tape, I mean, the conversation has been, what do we get for, the value of paying, what are we paying out 65 grand to be part of the, sheriff's overwatch? I've maybe seen them I can count on one hand a number of times I've seen the new black Suburbans they have running around here. So we're paying that fine, sure, but at 4 or 5 o'clock on Friday, if somebody's robbing the house down the street and I call the sheriffs, I can guarantee you they ain't getting there by the time the robbery's done. But if I can call him and he flies down 180 miles an hour and gets there in 5 minutes, then there's a chance that the crime's solved or stopped or the house isn't robbed, they run off, whatever. He doesn't even have to do anything that comes up the street. That's how I envisioned it, and I think that's how we've talked about it. It's a matter of, does that suit a rural town in Vermont? I think it does, because I for one don't, I didn't move here to have a cop on every corner. I don't think people should expect that either. If you want to live in that, live in the city, don't live out here. But we have constables and always have in rural towns for a reason. So, to provide local security, local policing. So that's how I see it.
So outside of that 12 hours that we're talking on the weekend, there's on-call time too, is that what I'm hearing?
We kind of discussed it, we just weren't really sure on how the compensation really kind of figured into that.
We based that on our last conversation where you guys effectively said you'd be willing to give it a shot, reduced amount of hours. So we came up with, why, the sheriff's not on call over the weekend, so why not try it on the weekends? And now would be a great time to try it, because all the people come up here.
Can I join in here, guys?
Right, this is the sheriff. Sheriff Collins. Yep. Please.
So first of all, we do have folks on the weekend. We've answered calls in Plymouth on the weekend. We have night shifts on the weekend, day shift on the weekend. To say that we're not in Plymouth, just because you haven't seen them, I mean, we have the stats improved, body camera and everything else improved that we've been here. I came in late to this conversation and I apologize for that, but we certainly can provide a more than adequate amount of coverage. And the conversations I've had with the select board is you folks were fairly happy with the coverage we're providing. And I'd love to talk more about that if we're failing on our end, what we can do to fix it. But we, a couple months or a month ago, we answered a call. We were right there with the threatening him with a firearm near the Gavel-to-gavel property. So to say we're not available on weekend or evenings is disingenuous. So I just want to chime in there with that.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue of whether or not the sheriff is effective. I think it's an issue of whether or not the type of policing, whatever that is being offered, is effective for the community. That's how I see it. Whether or not you're responding fine, that's not something I'd be privy to, what crimes you're responding to and where, but I think that we've been having this discussion, longer than you've been sheriff, about what we wanted to do for the community. And just thought that empowering the constable would be a good option for Plymouth. I mean, we can all agree to disagree or not. I know there's been people in the community that have supported that idea. And, I, for one, I am one of those people. So we'll leave it at that, I guess. But
I would just say that as a general principle, I would always prefer local police, people who live in the community, people who are known in the community, who understand the community. It doesn't matter what the community is. Local police serving that function in the local community, I think is always a better option. I have issues with the whole idea that we're moving toward as a country of what I am just referring to as the way somebody referred to it as professionalizing, which usually means that authorities in whatever area it is who are being professionalized, it can be teachers, it can be administrators, it can be police, it can be a wide range of things, they're going to a generally kind of a national standard of behavior and training, which has good sides to it, but it also has a tendency to act as if all communities are the same. And if you're doing that, you end up having to train and prepare and equip and engage citizens as if you are expecting what you would find in the worst communities, not necessarily in a given community. And it just becomes, in a sense, abstracted, which just troubles me. It makes it more difficult for that interaction to be human to human. It becomes more a matter of professional to non-professional, professional to layperson or something like that, which becomes a whole other kind of power dynamic inserted into that relationship that I think can prevent solving some problems in an unofficial and low-key way, which in a rural community like ours, where we have so little crime, so little problems other than people speeding, that I just think it creates a distance and a barrier rather than encouraging a sense of community and inclusiveness of all the different parts of the community. And so I favor this kind of an approach, that we have our own police in our own community, neighbors, friends, and we interact in that way with one another. And we all have different roles to play in our community. One of them is policing.
You're absolutely right. It's a hammer and nail effect. You know, it's the first time I came to Vermont 16 years ago was on the 4th of July weekend. I was in Saxton River where they do the big carnival and they have a big fire hose fight. I was just hanging out. I'm looking around and I said something to my host. I'm like, yeah, this is, I mean, you wouldn't go somewhere else in the United States. There's no cops, there's nobody around. And he's like, I can't remember the guy's name. Let's say he's like, hey, Bobby. And he lifts up his shirt and, you know, he's packing his pistol. He's like, I'm a cop. And I was like, well, isn't that cool? You know, the guy's out there, you know, in his shorts and he's flip-flops, fire hose and other people, cop, everybody, you know. So that's the idea that I have of how police should fit into, you know, a rural community where everybody knows each other. I don't think that running around, you know, black Suburbans that look like they're in South Carolina or Tennessee need to be running around here. I just don't agree with that. What he said is it's a national paradigm of, you know, militarized policing whereby it's a, you know, everything's a battlefield. And, you know, to the cops' credit, you know, all the shit that's been going on for the last 3 years, they need to have that posture. But we don't need that posture here.
I don't think we do have. I don't think we do have that posture. Yes, you see black Suburbans, but Ryan Palmer has done things that he said he would do. I mean, he has changed the focus of that police department. I'm not saying
he's not.
You know, and he's been. That police department has been really responsive. I mean, we had a problem here at the town hall. He was on the phone to us and couldn't get me that second, but he's right back on helping us solve the problem. And, you know, I mean, they came out here, asked what we wanted as a community. We told them, and they have tried to deliver on that. You know, I mean, I think, and I'm not against what, you know, we're talking about with Josh per se, but I mean, they are really meeting our needs, I feel like.
Or meeting the needs that we clarified for them that we were looking for.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And we have, one of the needs that we heard from the community was 24/7 on call, and we have that now, and the price of it is pretty darn reasonable compared to what we used to pay.
Can I chime in again? So, again, Keith, you're saying things that aren't true. First of all, they're Tahoes, and they're dark ash metallic, not black. Now, I'm being a little facetious here, but I bought those because that's what they had in stock when we were looking to switch. So if they were white Tahoes, would you be offended by that? I just don't understand where the hostility towards my agency.
And by the white Tahoe, but you're also doing, you know, you got a wrap on there with the non-reflective, you know, sheriff logo, so it's blacked out, and they're sitting on the side of the road. They look like a, you know, like a drug interdiction team that you'd see on a turnpike on any, you know. So
most of my cars that work in your town are fully marked police cars. On a couple of our admin sedans, we went with the ghost graphics for my lieutenant and myself. Mine's completely unmarked, but our patrol vehicles and, you know, Tyler Trombley's, it took a while to get them marked, and they're all my units are marked now. A couple have ghost graphics. So, but I think that we've been incredibly responsive, and my goal and my direction from an agency head standpoint was that, yes, we will professionalize agency, and I can show you our training records and things like that. We also are going to make sure that we get away from this occupying force feel, and that we reach out to the community, that we talk to folks in the community. Both Jay and Rick and I have had multiple conversations and things where we've solved and worked through some problems. I think that you're really, I'm going to stand up for myself here. I think you're really being disingenuous. I think that you have an agenda here, and I take a little bit of offense by the way you're portraying my agency, because I've worked very, very hard to get away from that. And if you don't like the color scheme on my cars, I apologize. We have silver and white vehicles as well with a new color scheme. And I care about the people in Plymouth. We go out of our way to stop into the, you know, the businesses, what there is, to talk to folks. And we've been very responsive. So I just, you know, if you want to go a different direction, that's fine. But to come at me that like we're all of a sudden some occupying force because 16 years ago, you met a firefighter that had a gun in his pants and was also the town constable. Turn on the news any day now and see what's going on in Vermont. And yes, Plymouth is insulated from that a little bit, but I think the professionalization of the Windsor County Sheriff's Department was needed. And we're still trying to keep our small town feel. So sorry, I got a little sassy there.
Plymouth is, as Terry said, it's pretty crime-free. The only crime we're probably going to have is going to be associated with the onset of, the drugs and drug sales that are, now about a year into that. So all the associated, hangers-on that come with that, now that, it's taken root in Burlington, it should spread, through the rest of Vermont, and give it a little bit of time. So you might be busy in that regard here in Plymouth. But, we can talk about cops all night. I have 6, 7 people in my family that are cops, 5 uncles, so I have nothing against cops or your force. This is a discussion, it has been a discussion about what we thought was appropriate for the town of Plymouth. And like I say, predates, it's been going on now almost 2 years. So predates your election as sheriff.
So I have Bruce.
No, I have Tina.
Bruce and Tina, then we'll come back to you, Ryan.
Just a counterpoint to this small town concept with constable. There's nothing wrong with that. But sheriff's department is kind of midway between the police department and the state police. If the state police were here on regular patrols, I could understand your feelings, about the militarized version of a police department. I don't see that with the sheriffs at all. I've had, I wouldn't say close friends, but people on the sheriff's department who are awful nice, that I would talk to when I saw them on the side of the road or outside here. To think that small towns are immune to bigger problems than what we might have had in the past and might see potentially in the near future is not seeing things totally clearly. Things change, and a sheriff's department has the resources to react to a lot of things that a town constable isn't going to be able to. Town constable is, it's that old Officer Bolton thing. I don't know how old you guys are, but, and it's a great thing, to know the local cop. On the other hand, there has to be some separation between that local cop and the population so that things don't slip by that shouldn't because of the old boy network type of a situation. So I'm very comfortable with the Sheriff's Department, and I think that Josh could offer something perhaps in addition to that if we thought we ought to be spending the additional money. And that comes down to what Ryan has to say with what he can do on the weekends as opposed to what Josh can offer alongside of that if it's necessary.
Tina?
Yeah, it appears that this is a very possibly expensive first attempt to break from the sheriff's department. And as a citizen in Plymouth, I'm not really comfortable with that. If we're looking at having Josh take over the duties of the sheriff's department, we're going to need more than one person. I would hope that Josh would be able to take a vacation once in a while and have a life. And by switching from the sheriff's department to just the duties of a constable, which it sounds like that's the direction that this whole discussion is really about, we're potentially putting ourselves in a position where we don't have adequate coverage. And it sounds like we've got adequate coverage right now through the sheriff's department. It sounds like they respond 24/7, even when it's not their time to be on patrol. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. So I just that's all I wanted to say.
Can I add something? Just as an employee here at the town, I'm very comfortable with the sheriff's department. They've been responsive, and I'm not on a soapbox to pitch anything, but I feel very comfortable in having that relationship with them. They've been excellent, and that's for me as an employee. I don't have that relationship with you, Josh. It's not. That's just my opinion, and I know you have a lot of irons in the fire. So I think for me, in being, an employee here, how would you present, because you're on Woodstock Fire, you're a cop, like how do you present your time? It's shifts, you're gonna be out of time, is it gonna fluctuate weekend to weekend? What if you get on call up there, you're not gonna be available here? What are those kind of things?
So like I said, this was all just an idea that was kind of tossed 2 years ago, and it's being revisited. Ultimately, I mean, maybe it's something where we can work with Sheriff Palmer as a town, I am the closer than any of his officers, being that I do live in the town. But I would need, that's a conversation we'd have to have as a select board with Sheriff Palmer, which I'm totally open to have, if he's open to have that conversation as well.
And again, the idea of constable, we have constables, as per the statute you sent out, we don't have to have a frickin' constable, we don't have to do anything. The constable is not, we can write it off tonight if we wanted to. We do have them, so this is how this whole discussion transpired, and it's come about even just recently with the dog thing. Okay, so what does a constable do? If we're gonna have a constable, they're elected officials. We have two already. There are two. The other one's always MIA, but he does exist. He has been elected. Someone voted him into existence. There's a man there that came to us 2 years ago asking if we would pay for his training because he wanted to participate at a higher level. He wanted to help police the town. We've had this discussion. We thought with all the shit going on, especially in winter, it would be a good idea to have somebody local that could show up and just whatever. Ryan, I hear you. I know you're responding, but there's going to be instances where you're not going to get. This guy will get here quicker, and that's not a dig at your department. That's just the facts. John, he's right up the road. He can get to my house quicker probably than somebody coming from wherever, Woodstock, doesn't matter. The point is, are we as a town going to empower our constable to do police work? If we're not, I say, and excuse my French, get rid of the fucking constables, period. Hand it off to Ryan and be done with it. It's just, this is the facts. Constable wants to be a constable, he does it. Should we empower him? Should we give him 12 hours a week to give him a shot? I say yes. Maybe they say no. I don't know. We give it to the town. You want to give it to the town to vote. But I don't think this has to be, we don't got to tear down. We're not tearing down Ryan. We're not getting rid of the sheriff. It's just, do we use our constable effectively because we have one? Or do we just fold the tent up and go home? And everyone can chime in as they see fit. I have felt from the beginning, since the first time he came in nearly 2 years ago, that he wants to do it. We paid for your training already. If you want to do it, buy him the gear and let him do it and see what happens. What's the worst that happens? It either doesn't work, he doesn't want to do it, or it's just a shit show. Who knows? But that's where I stand. Everyone else can stand in a different spot if they want.
Elaine?
What about we ask the town how they feel about it?
Well, that was
Figure
gonna
out
be-
what the
thank you.
expenses would be for a year
Correct.
and let the town vote on it.
I think that's a great idea. Right now, we don't pay the constable anything because they're really not performing duties for us. But I think in that spirit of what do you want as town folks?
Yeah.
I think we should come up with a budget. That's probably on you, Keith. And then we present that with the concept of.
I agree, and I've been pretty silent, but let me say this. I agree with what Jay said earlier. I support the Sheriff's Department 100% because I know what they do for the town. And Josh, were you seeing this as becoming a town employee or a subcontractor?
Well, So that's the thing, I wouldn't be a subcontractor, I couldn't be a subcontractor.
Okay, so as a town employee,
But as a town constable, I'm elected into that position.
Employee.
yeah,
So
but
it's-
if you're gonna be paid by the hour, then you're an employee. And with that becomes a lot of other overhead expenses, insurances, workman's comp, those kind of things. So we have to be aware of that. What I would do if I were you is I would put together an accurate budget, not we think this is about 2,000, this might be 1,500. Let's identify the exact costs, okay? Write it down on paper so we can have a budget conversation, and I think we should bring this to the floor at town meeting and let the voters decide.
Well, that's-
But we can't do that without an accurate budget.
That's basically what I was, saying, like,
Yeah.
it was revisited. I was like, well, I'll get some just quick numbers to kind of just get an idea. Like I said, I'm totally fine with working with Sheriff Palmer and the Sheriff's Department to provide more immediate service to, because he's on a right point when he says, like, if it's 2 AM on a Thursday night, I don't know what Ryan says, what Ryan's response time is, but mine's gonna be 5-7 minutes.
Okay, well, we can have that discussion at town meeting and let the voters decide. Does that make sense?
I've also. Sorry, I jump in when I'm not called on, I apologize.
Go ahead, yep, please.
You say go ahead,
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, please go ahead, Ryan. And when we've actually.
I've also talked.
Go ahead, sorry.
I've also talked to Josh and offered him, a part-time slot in my agency where we would provide a take-home car and he could, respond. I think with the constable scenario, you're taking on a lot of liability. Also, Josh is a level 2 certified officer. So when we talk about responding to burglaries and all this other stuff, he can't investigate that further than just showing up, right? And then calling for backup. So there's a lot of, nuance to this. And, like I said, I'd be more than willing, Josh and I have had conversations, be more than willing to put him on staff with me. If that's, if you guys need that in town. And we've had that conversation. It's never, didn't fully come to fruition, but that offer was there and I was fine with that. But I would be, putting my Windsor Selectboard hat on. I think that you're incurring, if I was looking at it as a selectman, I think you're incurring a lot more risk. The liability is greater. You now have, even though he's an elected official, you now have a town employee out there that you're on the hook for workers' comp, and everything else. And also, is he going to be responding in his own personal car? And I think that's in policing in America nowadays. I don't know that that's, anyone would think that was the best practice. And again, the town's just taking on an awful lot of liability when I don't know that it's needed. If we're worried about response in the middle of the night, I think that we can have a better workaround. And again, listen, I'm coming from a very self-interested position where I want as many hours as the town of Plymouth can offer, right? So take that for what it's worth. But I think when you really take the emotion out of it, I think there's better options for the town of Plymouth. Everything is expensive. Body cameras are incredibly expensive. The hosting, and, taking on, the data storage, the training. We talk about the professionalization of the training. We spent about $57,000 this year on training because I wanted to bring my staff up to speed. Again, Josh has a full-time job. Is he going to be available and all that you're paying him for these hours? I mean, at what point is it too much working 7 days a week? So, I'll do whatever the town of Plymouth sees fit, and whatever you think that we need to do better, I'll make sure that we do better at. I have to run because I do have another commitment I got to jump out to. But I apologize I couldn't be there in person tonight. But I'd love to sit down and have a little bit more in-depth conversation about what the needs are. I thought I understood it, but it sounds like maybe I need to understand the needs of Plymouth a little bit better.
Thank you.
Can I just say, the things that Ryan was just saying is exactly what I thought stopped this conversation about a constable before, and that was the issue of liability and employee status and so forth. Those kinds of issues, I thought, was what had kind of brought the conversation last time to a stop. So from that standpoint, I was a little surprised that we were coming back to it. Again, conceptually, I support the idea of very local police, but it does seem to me that if we're going to look at this as objectively as we can, we have to understand what those costs and liabilities actually look like. That's part of what we're looking at. And personally, I would be in favor of trying it for a 3 or 6 month period with that 12 hours a week or whatever kind of scenario, if the other questions can be dealt with in a way that makes sense long term, because the question in my mind would be, and again, I think Ryan just raised it, is are we talking about Josh as potentially an add-on to what the sheriff is doing, or are we talking about replacing what the sheriff is doing with Josh and maybe a second constable who also wants to do that? But I thought this whole issue of backups and limited response capability because of one person versus 2 people, all of that sort of thing is what stopped us before. And I guess as we started this conversation, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, I guess some of these have been answered at this point, but maybe not. Maybe we're back to the question of, do we want to find answers to these questions and see if it's a viable thing to do? If it is, I would strongly favor it. If it isn't viable, it isn't viable.
Sure.
Can I just interject one more time before I done?
Sure.
And on the political landscape, I think that you will see the constables go away in the state within the next couple of years. They're already having enough trouble finding training. Now, Josh is associated with the much into the scenario that I don't know if it's even going to be around in 4 or 5 years.
Al, and then Josh.
Yeah, Mike, and I'm going back, if you decide to start putting, a prospective budget together, when you start looking at dispatch, make sure you look at what frequencies you want to use. Because, getting new frequencies, new antennas,
Costs a lot.
are not cheap.
Josh.
So, Ryan, are you still on?
No.
You said you
Yes,
had.
sir.
So here's my theory, and you tell me if it's possible on your end, but working in conjunction, there's got to be a way where you and I, we've had kind of conversations back and forth about it, but never really materialized into actually fruition, but working both where the select board has some say, and I'm working in conjunction with you and your department. As you know, I work well with your department in my other job, so I have no problem working with you. I'm just saying, is there a way we can make this all work as a cohesive unit to maybe make it so the town of Plymouth needs are met?
I think that the idea of, I would be more than happy to hire you as a part-time employee. I think we would have too many cooks in the kitchen. Being elected and a contractual organization, I think we're very responsive to the select board. But I guess, what are we trying to, at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? Are we just trying to have a constable? is it that you just want to be the Plymouth constable, or do you want to provide law enforcement in Plymouth? If it's you want to provide law enforcement in Plymouth, I'm more than happy to put you on part-time, I'll give you a cruiser, a radio, a gun, training, policies, all that. And, you know, I don't know that, I guess what's the need to have both? So I'm not trying to be a jerk there. I guess what's the point? And if the point's the best possible service to the town of Plymouth, I think that we have some answers to that. But I do have to run unless you have a rebuttal. And I apologize for having to skip out.
So I like the idea of local policing, but that was the infrastructure problem that we ran into when I think Rick and I called the league. So I guess the next thing is then budget, right? And then we talk about it and we share that, the benefits and drawbacks at town meeting. But we got to be ready ahead of that.
So you're putting it to the people, in other words.
We can do that. Do you think we should do that?
I mean, ultimately, it sounds like it's gonna have to be that way. I mean,
Yeah,
I think the people sitting here are gonna say that, so that's a small sample size of the electorate.
I wonder, though, I mean, I think there's maybe room for some preliminary conception of whether it's a viable thing.
Right.
I mean, if we're exploring that thing about liability and limitations on what Josh can do with that backup and that sort of thing, and what that might actually look like, it might rule it out. If it doesn't rule it out, then I think the next step is to see if the town, what direction the town wants to go.
Right, because it's going to cost more to have all this infrastructure to support somebody 12 hours a week. You know, by the time we invest in equipment and all the administrative costs, but if you said, hey, we value that local presence in addition to the sheriff.
Well, it sounds like if Ryan made good on the deal to hire him on part-time, that would be the best possible option.
And that's a pretty generous offer.
Sounding like it.
And it takes care of all this.
Yeah, and then we can get rid of the constable, totally. I mean, your term expires and we just write it out, just like the statute says. No more constables, the other guy's MIA anyway, and then you work for the sheriff's part-time, and that's the ideal situation. If that's assuming that's what you'd want to do, I think that's a good idea.
And if we have a problem, something comes up, there's a lawsuit, Windsor County Sheriff handles that, not us and our attorney and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and all these.
I mean, that's the most seamless That's the most seamless Provide, checks the box of having somebody close, but it doesn't open up the whole can of worms, having to take on all the assorted baggage of. And if it's true what he said, that the constable's going away anyway, then we might as well not even deal with it. But
I'm not gonna give him a black Tahoe though, I promise.
I wanted one with the ghost flames on ghost graphics if we were gonna do it. That was what I was thinking. Maybe we'll get a white one. What about a Crown Vic? a white Crown Vic.
Okay, I think this brings us to the errors and omissions portion of the meeting.
Errors and omission.
Oh, yeah.
The whole conversation is probably an error. Should be an error and an omission. Can we deduct that from the official record? Anyway, well, that sounds like if you can explore that further with him, I think that sounds, it's a win-win.
Yeah, it's a great solution.
What is this, errors and,
So,
what are we talking about?
So the listers were going to be here tonight to present this, but there are
address issues?
There's all kinds of little problems with they've noticed on tax bills, and they have a certificate that they have filled out for us with those problems, and they have signed it.
And that's something we gotta.
It is a part of a legal process. I've never been involved in this before.
We have to give it our blessing, in other words.
We do have to approve this. One of them, let's see.
So the listers have already worked it out. Now we just need to.
It's details. Here's one,
sign off.
Manifest error, rounding error, error building placed on property belongs to neighbor, town property tax exempt, so they're taxing some, okay. Plymouth Community Center, for example, is town property tax exempt. And then there's one here, combined 2 parcels and one didn't get inactivated. So this is a legal process that we have to go through to approve the changes to make them correct. And I will make a motion to approve that. Would you like to see?
Yeah. Mike was responsible for all this?
And Michelle.
And Michelle.
Yep, and Naomi at one point, but Naomi is no longer a mister.
Error inactivated.
On there was the barn that was on.
The name.
Somebody had been getting billed for 4 or 5 years, about $600 a year in property taxes. So,
For somebody else's barn?
yes, and so it was double, we were
Yeah.
getting double. So anyway, they made the changes that the
Wow.
municipal had recognized that on her tax card. So there's going to be probably a big hearing.
They give him a refund?
Wow.
You want to see it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which title is this, junior or senior, do you know?
I would think junior.
Combined 2 parcels.
That's probably up on
Grandview?
Grandview, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Second?
Sure, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We need to sign something? Or just
I think
need a motion?
they did. I think we don't.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, so that goes in that pile. That's finished.
Okay. We have to discontinue a section, well, we have to have a discussion about a road name. Is that right? Which is,
Duck Pond Road, that one?
is it where Davis Road ends?
Oh, that one, yeah, that's different.
There's a mistake on a map. Can you fill us in a little bit? Just on the,
Long story short, yeah, the 911, state 911 map refers to private right-of-way as, a piece of Davis Road, and it's, clearly not. So it's led to significant problems. And it should not be denoted as such, because it leads to, other Google Maps borrowing it and apps that use Google Maps, and it's clearly not, it's private property, number one, and it's not a town road going up a mountain, so it needs to be corrected. So it's doesn't reflect that.
and so I think our action here is to ask that the state map be corrected by 2 Rivers-Ottauquechee. That would be their role.
Yeah.
So I would make a motion to request that 2 Rivers-Ottauquechee correct the state map.
Second.
Okay.
Done.
Next piece of business would be our next meeting date, and I believe the 15th, Elliot Rubin is going to do a school board presentation to let us know, get us caught up.
What date is that?
January 15th?
Do you want to come for that?
Oh, because that's the second one, right?
So the first would be Monday, then the 8th is the second, because it's not New
Right.
Year's Day, so.
Okay, so we're going to have a meeting on the 8th. I will not be here, by the way. I'll be out of town for that, but it's okay. Do you guys want to have a meeting on the 8th?
Sure.
Okay. And then the following week, we'd have a meeting as well with the school board. That's why I was like getting out over my skis on that, but that was the point, to have still have the second meeting.
Unless there's a reason we don't have enough business to have a meeting on the 8th.
It's up to you all.
All right, I guess we can decide that.
Was it the 15th then?
There's not enough business. We don't need it.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys, if you want a meeting or not.
I don't have anything pressing right now. Why don't we hold on it?
Okay. If you need one, you can always call an emergency.
Yeah. Well, we can post it, too. We can change our mind.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
But right now, we'll go with no meeting on the 8th, but if something comes up that we think we need to have one, we'll change our mind.
Yep.
So 15, okay, for now. Got it.
And then I think the only other thing we have are mail-in warrants and an executive session to discuss a personnel issue. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that is something that can, I mean, not to, I'm not, is that something that can work for you? That, what he suggested, or not? No, you don't want to go down there?
I don't want to get sent to Heartland and Cavendish and Springfield, and
Would you?
that's the kicker, that's what he said last time.
Well, negotiate it out with them. you know?
That's gonna be my negotiating factor, which is like,
Yeah, and your hours too, Josh, you know, if it's the weekend stuff and you got 12 hours and you want to stay in Plymouth, see if you can negotiate.